Alright, today's video is going to be kind of short. I got my truck covered up because I've been doing a bunch of metal work in here and I don't like to get it dirty. Haven't been able to get very far in the engine because I'm waiting for springs. No, I have the springs, but I'm waiting on the retainers and one other part for the heads because I called up K-Tech and they said that with that LS7 stage 3 cam that I cannot run the factory valve springs and retainers. I've heard that I can, but that the valve springs will break all the time if I run the factory springs. So I'm upgrading to some PSI springs and titanium retainers and also some spring seats that K-Tech recommended. I was going to show you here, I've been working on a little side project for the engine that I need. I kept it covered up. I got a little weird thing for cool intakes. So I went with the Jenvey intake. I bought this thing used on eBay. Paid a pretty penny for it, but it was about a little less than half the cost of a new one. Well, the problem with these intakes, I'll show you this also, come with these little air horns that I have not got on there. Also, I do not have an air filter for this. I got one in my mind for later on, but for short term, I'm going to use little booties like what sprint cars would use in the dirt. But these intakes, you can't run a mass airflow obviously with them unless you run some sort of assembly down into one tube and then ran a mass airflow, but I'm not going to be doing that because I love the looks of this intake. But they also don't have an idle air control built into them, but they do have bosses underneath to put, I guess, nitrous if you want, or air fittings. I'm assuming it's mainly for air fittings. So I've made up my own air fitting for a manifold, an air manifold, so I can run idle air control. I used bigger line than what the inlet size is on the intake, so hopefully it won't just feed one or two cylinders. So that's what I got rigged up there, and then I spent the last 7 hours today making up an idle air control valve. Alright, so I made up a little idle air control. I took a LS1 idle air control solenoid, and then I got a piece of aluminum down at my local metal supply store, and I have a vertical mill. So I machined out the basics of what I knew I had to have. I had to have an air inlet, and then I had to have a vacuum manifold built in. And then I had to try and figure out where to put it. My original goal was to mount this to another manifold that would mount each cylinder to one big manifold, so that way they would all get fed air. But there just isn't room here. There's no room up front because of the water pump either. So I got this, I whittled it out so it fits right in down here in the opening on the valley cover, so it'll sit down in here. And then the bolt will go down right through here, and the idle air control will sit right in there. It's close fit, but it fits. And then I'll have to run little air hoses from there to there and there to there so I can feed each bank. Alright, so I got this rigged up here. I'm missing one fitting for my brake booster, but I'll run a brake booster fitting off of here going over. I may end up having to run a vacuum canister for it, and then my HVAC will plug in here. So I just basically have this left to mount and get my elbow on there, and then this will be done. And hopefully next week I'll have my retainers and I can get the heads loaded and put them back on for good.